Awesome. Hey, everybody. This is the voice of Julian. I help run the demandcurve.com marketing training program where we teach advanced marketing like what you'll hear about today. I also write TechCrunch's marketing column, and I used to run marketing at a company called Webflow. So this webinar's insights are coming from Nat Eliason and Bernard Huang, the two co-hosts we have right here. And these are two of the most knowledgeable content marketers and SEO experts I've met. I've either worked with them or I've used their products. As for Nat, he runs the content marketing agency, growthmachine.com. And Bernard runs the professional content writing tool called ClearScope. And without further ado, Nat, we're going to send it over to you.
Yeah, so starting off, this is something that has become a really big topic in SEO and content recently from all of the Google updates we've seen over the last year. So there was the big update last fall. Medic update is what it's kind of colloquially referred to, where a lot of the big sites that talked about health were hit really hard. So these are like the Dr. Axes and the Mark Sissons and the Bulletproofs and all of those. And some of them lost anywhere from like 50 to 80% of their traffic. I know like Dr. Axe and Mark Sisson got hit particularly hard. And this is something that has changed how I think a lot of sites need to think about SEO and topic selection. Basically, the recent updates suggest that Google now is trying to primarily rank sites that have a demonstrable relevant expertise to the topics that they're talking about. And we have to ask now more than we did before whether a site should really be the one ranking for a topic. I think maybe 3 or 4 years ago, it would be pretty easy for a product site or like a personal blog to rank on a topic like how to clear up your eczema. And that has gotten significantly harder in the last year, where now we're really seeing those medical and high expertise queries primarily being served up by Healthline, WebMD, sites that, whether or not you agree with their prescriptions, and, we can talk about that too, but that have very clear, obvious expertise. So in topic selection now, one consideration is, okay, if somebody's looking at your site, is it clear that you are actually an expert in this area and that, you should be listened to? And then 2, there's the question of, okay, well, what can you do to increase your obvious expertise? And then 2, how can you choose topics that will be easier for your site to rank on than topics that it might prefer a medical site to rank on? As a good example, for our T blog, right, Cup and Leaf, we've lost traffic recently to articles that are targeting broader health topics, like natural ways to treat a cold. Those are much harder to rank on now, but topics that are tea specific, where we have kind of an obvious expertise by being a tea company and tea site, those have remained easy to rank for, right? Stuff like best oolong tea or even something like benefits of green tea. Those have remained relatively easy. So it's kind of a subtle shift in how you think about topics you go after since Google has made and continues to make these updates that are rewarding that expertise on site.
Yeah. So actually, to build off of what Nat is saying, there is this movement in what we would call subject matter authority, at least what we're calling it. No one's really pegged exactly what's happening, but I think that this here, as like a brief presentation that I put together, is a fairly good assessment of what we believe to be happening within the Google search algorithm. So as you may or may not know, Google has a knowledge graph, which is just a fancy way of saying it understands associations between certain topics and the related subtopics based on how each thing is, say, being talked about. So what's happening is that Google is saying, okay, well, when I scrape a piece of content on the internet, I'm also at the same time using natural language understanding to understand what this as a subject matter is discussing. And what Google is doing on the back end is then comparing your content and how comprehensively you're covering it to its own understanding of that particular topic. What we have found then is that your content's ability to map closely to Google's own understanding of that topic, along with, of course, the classical way of thinking about SEO, which would be domain authority, right? How many backlinks your website has. Those two factors are actually then being used to inform where you're initially going to seed in the search results for Google's experimentation process, right? So the reason why rankings fluctuate, where you could be rank 9 and then the next day rank 3, is that Google is simply evaluating and testing to see how good your content is from a user engagement perspective. And really now building off of what Nat is saying, this emerging concept of subject matter authority is very strong. So Nat saying, okay, we were doing really well for all of our tea related things. We're trying to now branch into benefits of drinks and that kind of stuff. Google's saying, okay, well, I have a very high confidence that whatever Cup and Leaf publishes around tea is going to be awesome because, I've done the testing on their best green tea piece of content, their best black tea piece of content. And this stuff is good, right? It's ranked number 1, it's ranked number 2, it's the featured snippet. So anytime Cup and Leaf publishes anything around tea, Google says, of course, this is likely to be really good and gives Cup and Leaf the benefit of the doubt. But when Cup and Leaf is trying to spring into a new topic, like say health benefits of just drinks in general, Google's like, well, I don't know, right? I'm not as willing or trustworthy, even though the content that they're producing is probably good. You're now kind of competing on a different playing field that's not specifically around tea. So this is why, in my opinion, the concept of topic clustering and also content pruning are becoming widely accepted best practices. At the high level, what topic clustering or pillar page, hub page, whatever you want to call it, is doing is that you're proving to Google's algorithm that your content for a particular subject matter or topic is good and it's satisfying the searcher. And then, right, you're landing and then you're expanding and you're going then saying, okay, well, instead of just talking about tea, maybe I'm going to talk about coffee or health benefits of tea. And that improves Google's trust that, okay, well, you've already landed one subtopic and then you go to more subtopics. And then the reason why I believe content pruning is also important is because Google's looking at your site as a whole in terms of the overall quality of the content that you're producing. So if you have, say, 10 pages, each page pulls in 1,000 organic hits, then you have obviously every page producing quite a bit of organic traffic, which means that subsequent pages across your site should also perform well. The vice versa is where you start to get into trouble, specifically with large websites, right? If you have 100,000 pages pulling in 10,000, then each page is only worth like 0.1 organic hits per month. And so you scratch your head and you say, well, we just produced this really awesome blog post. Why is it not performing? Well, the reason is because your overall site-wide quality metric just informs Google that most of the content that you're pushing out is going to be trash anyways.
Maybe I'll jump in for a question for Nat here.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say you are an authority. Let's say, yes, you're Cup and Leaf and you're talking about tea, but you're actually, you have MDs writing your blog post. Nat, what are some ways you'd suggest putting that authority on display to perhaps appease the Google gods that this is something you should rank for?
Yeah, so the easiest ways to do this are, and I can share my screen here as well. Give me a moment. Let's go to, so this will give you 2 good examples of it. All right, so if we're looking at Healthline, they do a really excellent job of this, and I think this is why this might be part of why they've been rewarded so much with the recent updates. So let's scroll down here and find where they have it. Oh, interesting. They don't really seem to have it on this post, although maybe I need to turn off my ad blocker. Um,
I think
all right.
because that's a study review as opposed to like recommendation.
Yeah, an actual health article.
Exactly. So what Nat's
Yeah,
queuing up
let's see.
here is a Healthline article for those who can't see. And he's going to show us a couple things they're doing to demonstrate to Google they're an authority who should be ranked highly on that topic.
Yeah. So let's go to here. I think these health topics are where they're going to have, there we go. All right. So in their posts, they've got this call out, right? Medically reviewed by Timothy J. Legg, PhD, PsyD on, certain date. And then they have written by, Tracy Angel. So even though this guy, Timothy, didn't actually write the post, they're showing that it was medically reviewed by him, which I think that seems to be sufficient for adding a lot of authority. And then to go off of somebody asked in the Q&A, they were anonymous. They said, is there a way to kind of like hack that authority? Say you don't have, a Timothy to review all of your posts. One thing that we've seen, and Bernard, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on this as well, is the way you cite information in your post seems to be a quality signal to Google. So if we look at who Healthline is linking to, and you can see it kind of in the bottom left of the screen here, right? So this is to the psychiatry.org. These are to like PubMed, to NIH articles, right? It's a trusted source. So that's actual medical research, more Healthline stuff, more PubMed links. Those, like having really high quality links and citations for your information seems to be a quality indicator for Google that you've actually provided well-researched information. And, this is, so like Healthline is a health blog, right? So they've got these medical people on staff to help with it. If you don't have it, Perfect Keto does this very well, where if you read their blog, let's see, if we go to one of their articles, right? So something like how to start keto, they do something similar to Healthline where they don't, they have somebody else write the actual articles and then they're reviewed by like a medical professional. And then they put that on the top of the post so that you can see, okay, it was actually reviewed by someone with qualifications, and that adds some, yes, here we go. Fact checked by Dr. Anthony Gustin, DCMS, published by the Perfect Keto staff. So if you can have someone who can at least review your posts, whose credentials you can put on the page, that seems to be able to help quite a bit in continuing to rank on these more competitive health-related topics.
And just so we have a good lay of the land, Nat, what type of topics are subject to this high level of scrutiny and penalization from Google? So obviously, if we're talking about health, acne, ADHD, anything medical related, you have to have credibility and authority in that space. I'm going to guess also anything to do with financial advice. What else?
Those are the really big ones that we've seen get hit and move around a ton. Anything related to health, anything related to like finances and making money. I think, we would probably lump tax stuff into that too. I'm trying to think if there were any other areas where we saw a lot of movement. Oh, well, so here's another one, which is talking about other brands. It used to be easier to rank for something like Uber customer support, but now Google seems to be shifting those rankings around to really prioritize the actual sites that are being referenced instead of sites writing about the sites. So I don't work with anyone who was using this as a big part of their strategy, so I haven't personally seen it, but it does seem that there's probably been some loss in traffic to sites that did a lot of reviews and comparisons, especially if you had a tool and you had a lot of pages comparing your tool to other tools. Some of that stuff seems to have been moved around, and then obviously ranking on purely another website search terms like Uber customer service. Those I think we've seen a lot of volatility on as well. Have you seen any other areas, Bernard, that's shifted around a lot from those changes?
Yeah, no, I would say that you covered the most of the impact. I think at a higher level, the SEO community is terming this specific paradigm as YMYL, which is shorthand for your money, your life. So if you were operating in categories of search that surrounded your money or your life, which is the health content, the personal finance content, right? Supplements, anything surrounding your money or your life, loans, then you saw a lot of shakeup within the algorithm updates of late. I think a way that at least I frame all of what's happening in search is within this broader paradigm of like search query deserves X, right? So SEO is not a one size fits all equation. And I think that what Nat was alluding to could also be like fit into this paradigm, which is to say that different searches, different keywords have different associations that get paired with them, right? If I'm doing, for example, a search on like how to surf, right? This would be what we call search query deserves a video, in the fact that you're seeing a whole lot of videos in the above the fold video block. And even if you dived into a piece of content, right, you're getting lots of photos and lots of these little mini GIFs or videos, right, teaching or instructing someone on how to surf. So we would say, okay, search query deserves video. And the key, in my opinion, to unlocking modern day SEO is to understand the pairing of these three particular assets, right? What is someone searching for and why, right? Are they looking for resources? Are they looking for a comparison of the best products? Are they looking to learn something? And subsequently, as a result, what is the right content type to be serving the user, right? If they're searching for best credit cards, that's going to be a catalog of the best credit cards with some amount of editorial commentary, right? And the last one, it happens to deal with what we were talking about earlier with the medic update, right? What are the core things that someone is likely to care about given that particular topic, right? If we're talking about your money and your life, then it is about the quality, the medical certainty of that piece of content. But for example, as another extreme example, if I were to search for just Trump news, this would be an example of search query deserving two very distinct items, right? Number one is media authority. If Cup and Leaf were to publish a piece of content around the Trump impeachment news, it wouldn't rank. Number two, as you can see here, is recency. It's not news unless it was published within the last 24 hours. So if you had not media authority and not recency, you would never rank for Trump news despite anything that you happen to do. So I actually did put together a analysis on like the winners and losers of the medic update a while back. It basically reiterates exactly what Nat was saying, right? The content clearly identifies the author or the medical authority that's reviewing it. It has a very clear date. They have separate bio pages for the peoples, right? They're saying, oh, you know, Dr. Andreas Enfelt is a Swedish medical doctor. And right back to kind of that citations, I think Human, HVMN, does a really good job, right? They're saying, look, when we're making a claim that ketones or ketosis and low carb diets are good for you, we're actually citing exactly where and why we're making those claims, right? They're doing well with scientific citations. And this is exactly kind of actually, I think, the biggest thing that we've seen, because we work with this small publisher called Wide Open Eats. They own just some small web properties, but you can see here, right, Wide Open Eats still persists amongst like Medical News Today, WebMD, Wide Open Eats, Mayo Clinic, Healthline, Lifehack. And this one, it doesn't have the medical reviewed, it doesn't have the author bios, but what they do is that when they make the claims as to a study done by, as you can see here, the University of Barcelona, they're linking to the University of Barcelona, right? They're linking to Harvard, Johns Hopkins, right? They're saying, look, according to WebMD, while the American Heart Association And they're saying, we're not just pulling these claims that we're making out of thin air. They're actually grounded by well-documented studies, and here they are. And as a result, you don't actually need as much of all of that other stuff as we've seen. If you're making claims around specific medical things, right, this is where we might say that that search query deserves citation, right? This, if you're saying this is good, you got to back it up. And if you're not backing it up, well, you're going to lose. And then obviously, different queries like hotels in San Francisco, that's a catalog where it's locality and user-generated review. If it's a how to do email marketing, right, that's maybe more content quality and a resource. If it's a, like Los Angeles patent attorney, maybe you're requesting a quote, right? And you got to pair together, okay, well, why is someone searching for this? Well, because they want an attorney. And then what would we present the user with? Well, a page with shining testimonials, very easy, either phone call or fill out the form calls to action, and different cases that the attorney has won. And what you've done, you've paired together what the searcher wants, the right content type, with the things that they're likely to engage with. And I think that that's very important.
So I'm going to jump in here with a note on authority, then let's put this topic to bed because it's not going to apply to everybody, so we'll move on. But the value in establishing your authority beyond just ranking better in Google is just remind people why they should actually believe the advice you're giving them. What makes you qualified to share that advice? Just generally speaking, like we run a marketing blog at Demand Curve, and there are a million blog posts on every topic we would ever want to cover. So why read ours when you've opened 10 other tabs in your browser and you're trying to pick the right one? I like to start off every blog post on demandcurve.com saying, hey, we've run marketing for hundreds of companies, and this blog post is a distillation of our best insights, period. It's like, okay, well, that's some authority. That's interesting. This might be above the threshold of random filler blog content. All right, Nat, let's move on to a brand new topic, and I'll throw it back to you, Nat.
Cool. So this is this is kind of tangential, and so I wanted to toss it in since it's a little bit relevant to what we were just talking about. But with sort of everything Bernard was saying about topic consideration and the page served consideration, the other big thing that has become a lot more relevant in the last year or two is Google's knowledge graph and what it can serve up on its own without requiring you to link or without requiring the searcher to go anywhere. I think like classic example of this would be the celebrity net worth website, where somebody had, accumulated tons of data on rough celebrity net worths, and he was making like tens of thousands of dollars a month on ad revenue from people going to his site to find those answers. And then Google just started scraping his site and others and serving up his data in the knowledge graph box. And so nobody ever needed to go to his site anymore to get the answers they were looking for. And it basically just destroyed his business, right? So one thing to consider with kind of a keyword strategy is, are these keywords that people are just going to be able to get the answer to right within the Google search box? So, one easy way to test this is, if the answer to a search query can be done in a sentence or two, Google's probably going to figure out a way to do it for you, and you're going to lose that traffic over time. And so when you're choosing keywords, there's a lot of value in picking topics that can't just be quickly done by a 1 or 2 sentence answer or by a single metric.
Awesome. Maybe what we'll do is we'll dive into a few questions here. Keep your questions coming in, and I'm going to break up our chatting here with a few good ones. Let's see. Jimmy asked Bernard, can you share the deck? Bernard, I'll let you answer in the comments section. Max asked a really interesting question. I'll throw this one to you, Bernard. When you're getting started, does it make sense to focus on a few extremely high quality blog posts or a higher volume of very high quality blog posts?
Yeah, that's a great question. And to answer it succinctly, it is more important when first getting started to really hone in on a small range of like very long tail, we'll call them quote unquote long tail questions or searches that the user has, because one, those are less competitive, right? If you're going after diabetes as a general topic, very unlikely you just write the like everything you want to know about diabetes and expect to get there eventually, right? We might say, okay, let's start with the keto diet and how that affects blood sugar in diabetics. Very long tail search. The upside to this is something that Nat had in his notes when we were preparing for this webinar, is that you're actually also then hitting closer to the transactional query that you're looking for. Usually the higher level you go, right? If we're talking about diabetes, people are just searching for that for informational searches. But if you sell, say, keto products, then it's also in your favor to go after how the keto diet affects blood sugar in diabetics, because that's going to be a lot more valuable from your business. And you want to take that into consideration when selecting your content strategy. So the two of those combined, one, it's going to be easier for your content to tackle a longer tail search, and two, that it's going to be more valuable too, suggests that you want to start with very high quality pieces of content around those longer tail searches, in my opinion.
Also, Bernie, I want to summarize a very powerful point you made earlier in case it went over anyone's heads, which is before you start writing content to rank for a particular term, search that term on Google and identify what type of content is Google prioritizing here. Video, news, and then as per Bernie's chart there in his slide, make sure that you're not only offering the right content for that query, which usually will be something that's too much work to do if it's multimedia, meaning maybe don't bother writing blog posts to service queries that aren't bringing up other blog posts. But also there are other considerations, basically laying out to what extent must you establish your authority on this topic for you to be ranked highly. So there's a very powerful point of searching the terms you're about to rank for, or you want to rank for before you actually write that content. All right, got some more questions for you guys. Then we're going to go back to Nat and Bernard's points. Give me a moment, I'm just going to read through here. Let's see here. Holly asks, Bernard's point about pruning your content because having too many pages can be bad for your rankings. What would be a good way to systematically avoid that? For example, how many posts is too many, and are you better off combining a bunch of old small posts into larger high quality ones?
Yeah, all right. So the art and science of pruning is twofold. Number one, what I recommend that you do is you go into either your Google Search Console or your Google Analytics. And what we're looking for here is your pages, right? Obviously, you've created pages if you're creating them for search purposes to capture organic search traffic. And if your pages are not capturing any clicks or very few impressions, then clearly they're not doing what you wanted them to do in the first place. So I drag it out to maybe 12 to 16 months, really get a good look at your inventory, right, across your entire website. And what we're looking to do is then look at these pages that are pulling in a handful of clicks to no clicks whatsoever. And those then act as good candidates for axing, right? So that's step one is, okay, well, if we created the page to capture search traffic and it's not capturing search traffic, then we should do something about it. Then the decision is, okay, do we remove the page, right, 410 or 404, or do we merge the page with something else? That is where it gets a little bit trickier. Also, what people might do, which I don't recommend that you do, is that they do a soft 404. They say, oh, well, let's remove the page, but let's not actually 404 it. Let's just 301 redirect the page to our homepage, which Google looks at that and says, well, yeah, you wanted to do that, but that's not good, because when you're 301ing a page, you're basically telling Google and users that this page is now that page. And what you've done there is, if you have a like useless page around, say, the health benefits of, getting cats delivered to you on demand, and no one's obviously landing on that page, and you're like, okay, I'm going to redirect that to my homepage. You're signaling to people that this page that I used to have is now my homepage, which is not correct on the grand scheme of things. So then you're left with a 404 or a 301 merge. What I would do in that particular case is that there are a variety of things to consider. What I would recommend, and this is like a nice little hack for you, is that first of all, an experiment, right? If I did a search for the best credit cards, I'm going to get a list of search engine results back like this. What you can do is called an advanced search operator, where if I do sitewallethub.com, this is going to get me back everything that Google has indexed on wallethub.com for wallethub.com. What you can then do is append a search intent like this, best credit cards, and guess what we'll get back? That's right, exactly what Google thinks is the most relevant piece of content on Wallet Hub that talks about the best credit cards, right? We could say, okay, well, what if we repeated this for valuepenguin.com? And we'll get exactly what Google thinks is the most relevant piece of content on Value Penguin that talks about best credit cards. So what this indicates that you can do is something like this, right? If we do cupandleaf.com and we say best green tea, then you can see here, Cup and Leaf, or Google says, okay, well, this is it, your guide to the best green tea on the planet. Then we have best green teas in the world for weight loss. So now if I did instead like this for weight loss, then Google will say, okay, well, that's the most relevant one, which is the one for weight loss. If you're finding that a piece of content that you've created for a particular intent is lower ranked than another page on your site, it indicates that you have a problem with the content that's on that page. So for example, I'm not sure if this like example works right now, but if I did debit card versus credit card like this, okay. This used to be like beaten by this piece of content, like what is a debit card? Because when I do a search for like debit card versus credit card, you can see here that this, what is a debit card, is actually outranking the exact piece of content that Credit Karma had produced for credit card versus debit card. So when you're seeing that happen, it indicates that Google has found that this piece of content is just better than your existing piece of content. And this is where you as a content strategist needs to make like a judgment call to say, okay, should we merge these two pieces together or should we keep them separate? And if we're keeping them separate, right, why is this piece of content not actually performing for what we've designed it to perform for? And that's kind of then also in that art of pruning, right? So you say, okay, does it get traffic? No. Okay, should I remove it or should I merge it, right? You do like an advanced search operator plus a search intent to see where that piece of content stands. And then you make the judgment call to say, okay, maybe we just didn't create a great piece of content to tackle it. So let's go back and re-optimize it. Or maybe, right, it should just be merged into one piece of content that we've already created around that particular topic. That's one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is simply overlap, right? So for example, say you have a piece of content on how to get rid of pimples. You can see here over on the right that you get a list of search results back, but the list of search results that come back have all gravitated towards an intent. Fast, overnight, fast, 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 overnight. One generic piece of content, fast, overnight. If we did a search over here on the left, how to get rid of pimples, fast as the intent, you'll see that what has happened is that Google has pulled out the winners of the subtopic of fast and are having it rank for the core topic. So Healthline. Then you have glamour, glamour. which is right here, glamour. Then you have medical news today, right? That's this, medical news today. Then you have this, good housekeeping, which is this. And then you have GQ, which is that. And then you have very well health, Ellie, which is exactly right what we're seeing here, very well health and Ellie. So when you're seeing then a wide range of overlap like this, say you had a piece of content on how to get rid of pimples, and you also had one on how to get rid of pimples fast. And when you're looking at your content pruning, like why is my how to get rid of pimples generic piece of content not pulling in any search traffic? The reason is because, right, Google has identified that this particular search is better serviced through tackling this intent, which is fast. So it's then feeding all of the traffic to fast and skipping your generic page. In this particular example, you would merge your generic one with the fast one, because what we're seeing is that Google says, well, people are engaging more with fast rather than the generic one, which is why you're not getting traffic. So just a couple of different ideas on how to think about content pruning.
That's a very powerful insight. I'm going to switch to a different topic here from Colby. Nat, I'm going to throw this to you. Maybe I'll add my insight on this as well. Colby asks, how do you combat search cannibalization by Google? Any tactics, or should we just focus on building content that can't be quickly answered in a sentence? Nat, what are your thoughts?
So it sounds like cannibalization in this context is Google serving up its own answers to posts through the knowledge graph, right?
Exactly. Basically, when you search something like how many people live in the US, and then just for everybody else's knowledge, and then Google just gives you the answer in the search results as opposed to, so go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of it is kind of intuitive, right? So for example, we don't do any posts that focus on topics like, caffeine in green tea, because we know that something like caffeine in X is already just being answered by Google. And so I think that you can weed most of them out just with a fairly simple question of, is this something that could be answered in a sentence or two, or with a single metric? And if the answer is yes, might not be worth dedicating an article to. It's probably going to be worth including in a larger article, right? So if you were doing a mega article on coffee, right, or like origins of coffee, you would talk about the caffeine levels in coffee, probably somewhere in there, but it wouldn't really be worthwhile to make an article on how much caffeine is in coffee, at least from an SEO point of view, for a coffee blog, just because it's pretty unlikely that it's going to get much traffic. The other thing you can do, and I will bring up my screen again for this, is Ahrefs and a lot of other keyword tools actually give you some of this data. So if we log into Ahrefs here and we go to Keyword Explorer, and we can just look at like the cup and leaf list here. So this column in Ahrefs actually tells you the click percentage for a keyword. So a lot of these are pretty good, right? Like 77, 78, 89, 93. But if we search a keyword like caffeine in coffee, I suspect what we're going to see is a very low click-through rate. Oh, wait, you know what? I was showing you the wrong thing, wasn't I? I was looking at the paid ratio. Here we go. Yeah. So these are less good, right? 37% results clicked, 35% results clicked, right? Less, not all of these are great, but they're kind of normal amounts. Let's see if there's a really bad one here. This one's pretty low. Yeah, black tea caffeine, exactly, right? Very low click-through rate compared to something like, weight loss tea, where it's going to be 52, or green tea health benefits, where it's up at 66. So when you look up any keyword, and if we just try like caffeine and coffee, I suspect we're going to see this here too. Yeah, not click 79%, click 21%. So very low click-through ratio. And you can see it's come down a little bit over time. Probably, I bet if we extended this back further, we'd see it even more dramatically. So this is definitely a metric to look at in deciding what keywords to go after, because it's going to be a pretty big factor in how much traffic you actually get for the topics you do write about.
This is a nice overlap to Bernard's earlier technique of like, before you're going to write for a key term, it's not just a matter of how much search volume does that key term have. Does that key term actually generate clicks at all, or is it a wasted effort? And this relates to Bernard's earlier point of make sure you're actually delivering the right content people expect, or Google expects, for that key term. All right, at this point in the webinar, I want to switch to rapid fire answer mode. So Nat, I'm going to kick it off with you. I'm going to give you a few questions in a row if that's cool. Maybe answers between, I don't know, 30 seconds or less if you'd like. You're welcome to expand on anything that's particularly juicy. I'm going to start with one that I know is a pet topic of Nat's. Nat, when writing for B2B, is it better, let's just say for writing for anything, is it better to post straight to Medium, LinkedIn, or your website, or post in all three places? And how do you think about the comparison about where to post your content online?
Yeah, I'd never use Medium or LinkedIn as a primary publishing platform. The distribution can be useful, but again, you don't own your content. It's got basically zero SEO potential. It's not a good place to be building your blog. So what we usually recommend is post everything on your own site and then republish it on Medium and LinkedIn, and then have a link to the original basically in the first line of the post. So you can have something in italics, just says originally posted at, julian.com/marketing, whatever. And that way you can get some of the traffic back to your site without losing the benefit of getting exposed to a broader audience.
Awesome. Another question for you, Nat. Nick says, any thoughts on creating customer personas for your blog to help guide the structure of your blog content? And did you do this for Cup and Leaf?
It can be useful. We didn't do it. I think that it can be useful for helping you find keywords to go after. But if you're doing a super SEO focused blog strategy, it's not going to be as necessary to have detailed customer personas, just because in looking up the keywords and seeing like all the search stats and using those keywords to find other keywords, you're going to end up kind of creating customer profiles unintentionally. Bernard might disagree with me on this, but I think that if you are doing a SEO heavy strategy, you can get most of the value of customer personas just from digging around in the search terms and the related search terms for your niche. I will say that becomes more useful when you're thinking of converting people from your content. So, there are very different types of people who are searching the information that brings them to your blog, and then your ability to convert them, it's going to be helped by having kind of customer profiles of who is showing up and reading your stuff once they're already there, and then designing offers, incentives, calls to actions that appeal to those types of people.
Nat, Adam Kiesling asks, broadly speaking, if you want to stay on top of big Google updates that could make or break your rankings for your blog, how do you stay on top of this stuff? How do you zig where it's zagging? Where do you go? What do you do?
So for getting information on what's happened with the Google updates, Twitter is good. SEO Roundtable is good. The Traffic Think Tank Slack community is good. Obviously, Julian's community is good as well. We usually end up talking about them there. But the hard thing with the updates is, one, it's a lot of stumbling around in the dark trying to like make sense of what happened, right? Nobody really knows. None of us actually know what's going on. Like, people from Google have said too that the medic update didn't have anything to do with medical sites, and even though those are the sites that got hit the hardest, right? It's usually a little more complicated than what the blogs talk about. So the thing that I always try to keep in mind is, what does Google want to do? Like, what are Google's motivations? And Google's primary motivation is to provide the best search experience possible so that people find the information they're looking for. And I think that if you design your SEO strategy at least partially with that in mind, and if you assume that Google is going to continue to make updates to improve the search experience and decrease the gameability of SEO, then that helps inform a lot of what you do, because that tells you off the bat that, okay, anything that is a hack right now is probably going to be punished eventually. It might not be worth it long term. It tells you that you should probably bias towards longer, more quality articles instead of shorter, high quantity articles, because again, Google wants to provide a good search experience. And I think that you can answer a lot of questions about SEO and about what Google will do in the future if you come at it with that mindset.
Natasha asks, tell us the value of having infographics in your blog posts. Why do it? Is it worth you? Does it have good ROI?
We usually don't do it. So there's a couple main uses for it. One is for link building. This is a huge link building strategy for a while. You make an infographic, you create an embed code, you email a bunch of people, ask them to embed your infographic. I don't see a ton of success with that anymore. I think it's just popular because it's in some people's like SEO courses. But it's not, I don't think it's a great link building strategy anymore. I'm sure it can be done well if you find an industry where it hasn't been abused to death, but we don't do it for that reason. The thing we do use infographics for, and that I think is worth trying if you're in certain niches, is Pinterest. Infographics do extremely well on Pinterest. Pinterest drives an insane amount of traffic compared to other social channels with a lot of regularity, because Pinterest is in many ways like a visual search engine. And if you're getting good engagement on Pinterest, then your pins can stay relevant for a significantly longer amount of time than a tweet or a Facebook post. So if you're making infographics to post on Pinterest to redirect traffic to your site from Pinterest, that can actually be pretty valuable. I think we get like 500 to 1,000 visitors a day from Pinterest on the Cup and Leaf blog, which is like huge. And I know a number of other sites that are either in the like health and wellness or fashion or home goods or those kinds of industries that are doing similar stuff on Pinterest, and that can be super effective.
Awesome. We're going to do a few more rapid fire with Nat, then we're going to switch into rapid fire with Bernie. Nat, a lot of people are asking about where should acquiring backlinks fit into your overall strategy for SEO?
It's something you're going to have to think about from the beginning. You can do a blog without much of a link building strategy and have it start to rank over time, but it's going to be much slower, and you'll probably have been better off allocating some of that budget to doing link building. I will say that link building is extremely time intensive and hard to do well. So there can be value to hiring someone to help you do it. You just have to be careful about how they're doing it, because a lot of people are doing very pay to play link building. They have PBNs or they have a whole network of blogs that they're paying to get links from, and that can hurt you in the long run. So you have to do it carefully. You have to do it pretty white hat. Again, Brian Dean has a lot of good stuff on this. Or if you just hire one of the like good link building agencies, they can help with it too. But I would say that if you have basically no link profile, you're going to need to do it starting out. But over time, it becomes less and less important as you get more traffic and as you get more links back to your site. If we're looking at a site and they already have a comparable domain authority to the sites that are already ranking for content, then we might not put much focus on link building. But when we're starting out with a client who's coming up from scratch or hasn't put much effort into their blog, link building is basically a necessity for working with us, because we've just had a number of clients in the past who were starting from scratch. They just wanted content, didn't want to do link building, focused on just doing content for 6 months, and it would take up eventually, but you don't want to wait 6 to 8 months to start to see organic results, right? If you have a good link building strategy, you might start to see results in the 4 to 6 month time period instead, which makes it way easier to evaluate whether or not the strategy is working.
Nat, another one for you from Holly, and she asks, any specific tips for converting all of this traffic we're now acquiring onto our blog into actual users and leads and customers? So for example, have you toyed around with using quizzes to convert those visitors into email addresses?
Yeah. First up, hi, Holly. Good to see you here. Second, quizzes are, I haven't seen anything else work quite as well as quizzes for cold search traffic. This is something that was on mine and Bernard's list that we didn't get to, but there's a lot of different levels of intent in search terms. And the level of intent of that search term is going to play a big part in how easily you convert traffic from somebody arriving on that post. So as a really easy example, we have posts on benefits of green tea and best green tea. Best green tea gets maybe like a fifth of the amount of traffic, but it has a direct conversion to sale like 2 to 3x the health benefits article, even though the health benefits article is getting significantly more traffic. And the main reason for that is just the intent of somebody searching best green tea. They're much more ready to go buy something than somebody who's searching like health benefits of green tea. So the intent of the article is going to be kind of that first layer of conversion. But then for articles that don't directly convert just from the information, yeah, I would say quizzes, and second to that, like buyer's guides type downloadables seem to work extremely well. The big benefit of those types of content is in most cases, somebody showing up cold to an article who knows nothing about your business and might not even be immediately interested in what you're selling. They, one, in most cases, they're not even a good customer to begin with. But if they are, you need to make it as easy as possible for them to find the most relevant product on your store for them. And so ways to narrow the decision-making and provide them what they're looking for can help immensely. So for Cup and Leaf, we use a quiz that works extremely well. We have an article on the Growth Machine blog about setting it up. It's super easy. And for us, we've noticed that makes it easier for people to pick like what tea they might want, considering we have like 60 odd different kinds of tea on the site. It narrows the decision making. We've also seen buyer's guides work extremely well, like I said, where somebody shows up on a site because they're interested in like the paleo diet, having a downloadable saying like, get your paleo starter kit, like buyer's guide of like, the 10 supplements and like 5 whatever cabinet things that you need to like crush your paleo diet. Those work really well because they're answering kind of a broader question somebody has, which is, how do I do this diet? And giving them very clear solutions that include buying stuff at the grocery store and from other companies, as well as buying whatever product you offer to help solve that problem. So those are usually the 2 things that we recommend people start out with if they're trying to convert more of their blog and organic traffic into sales. And those work on the store too. They don't just have to go on your blog.
Very helpful. So before we continue with Q&A with Bernard, a few notes. The voice you've been hearing just recently, that's Nat, and he is the founder of growthmachine.com, which is a content marketing agency that we've worked with and we recommend clients use. So a lot of the things we're talking about, Nat will help do that for you. I'm pitching him because he's too humble to pitch himself, so perhaps I'm going to go ahead and do it because I really do. I'll put my reputation on them. They're fantastic. Similarly, I want to balance this out and remind you guys that a lot of the advanced stuff Bernard's been talking about, this is basically productized into a tool he built that does a lot of this called ClearScope. It's phenomenal, and I was in it yesterday, and I use it all the time. So I guess I'll give myself a quick pitch, then let's get back to the Q&A here. So if you go to demandcurve.com, we release this cool little thing now where we will intro you to marketing ad content agencies, growth agencies of various kinds, based on your company's needs. We'll help you figure out what do you actually need to hire an agency for, and we'll match you entirely for free. There's no catch. We'll just help you find a trusted agency that we've worked with. So that's demandcurve.com/agencies. And all right, back to the Q&A. Bernie, actually, Nat, do you have to go now? If so, maybe you can say your goodbyes, then we'll go to Bernie.
I do. Unfortunately, I have to run. But thank you, everyone, for joining. Thank you, Julian, for hosting this. And Bernard, thanks for hanging out.
Yeah, later, man.
See ya.
Thank you, Nat.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, Bernie, you ready for some rapid fire?
Let's do it.
Cool. So let's try to keep each one to maybe 30 seconds, and I want to do these kind people a favor and get through a lot of their questions. All right, Bernie, thinking about authority on a geographic level, someone here wrote in and said, for example, if I have an Indonesian site and I just want to build authority there, just how do you think about geographic authority?
Yeah. So what you want to do is to indicate to Google specifically that you are actually geographically present there. So things that increase locality in Google's algorithm. There's a lot of small business listing websites that'll say, Yellow Pages, Yelp, TripAdvisor. They'll say, yeah, this company is physically there. This is the address. This is their local phone number, right? Lots of things that cite to Google that your company is actually geographically present in either a city or a country. At a higher level at a country, obviously you have different Google top level or different TLDs, right? You can have google.co or not google.co, domain.co.uk, which is UK, domain.com.au, which is Australia. Those also signal geographic presence.
Awesome. Bernie, we got a bunch of questions coming in for you about tools. Could you please just tease out, could you please compare and contrast the value of Ahrefs, which Nat was showing off on his screen, Google Webmaster Tools, ClearScope, and anything else you think people should know about in the tool space for SEO?
Yeah, so I think that everyone who's interested in search engine optimization needs to set up their Google Search Console. It's just a free tool that Google gives you as a webmaster, which gives you deep insights into impressions, average position, clicks, that sort of thing. I would say that the best competitive analysis tool on the market, this is you saying, okay, I want to go after what Healthline is doing or what WebMD is doing or what Cup and Leaf is doing, then you want an Ahrefs, right? You want to go, okay, well, what is that domain performing for? What is the range of keywords, right? And you scrape those. And then from a content perspective, obviously that's why we built ClearScope to help with content optimization. And I would say you could consider that if you're producing a fair amount of content per month, usually 10 to 20 pieces at least, or else the tool gets a little bit pricey. And other than that, right, other things that you could consider would be a rank tracker. This is you saying, okay, every day I want to know how my website is performing for X keyword. And it'll scrape Google and say, oh, you've ranked up from position 30 to position 21. And lots of rank trackers on the market that could make sense. I think AccuRanker or even Ahrefs has like a rank tracker that's built in. That's something to consider there. And then from a crawling perspective, right, making sure that you're not getting into any technical problems, right? If a link breaks or if a page 404s, you want to be aware of it. There's Screaming Frog as a good free like desktop scraper. And then there's a variety of like web crawling tools, Sitebulb, Content King will make sure that they'll crawl your website like every day and say, oh, this page is now 404. Maybe you should look into it, right? So it just automates a lot of that work.
Awesome. Craig asked a question, which I'll answer really briefly, which is like, what tools are people using to monitor blog conversion performance? So you get traffic to your blog and then you convert them into leads or customers or what have you. So a demand curve, we use Google Analytics as a baseline for all of our tracking. It's kind of there free in the background. We'll layer on top of that sometimes an event-based tracking tool, such as Mixpanel, Heap Analytics, Amplitude, and there are others. And we'll use those to get much more granular on the behavior people take throughout our website. And it's usually a combination of those two tools that fill out the big picture. We don't usually have to use much more beyond that. If you're like a heavy enterprise B2B sales play, there's a whole army of tools you could be using for attribution and so forth. But for most companies, it could be overkill. All right, Bernard, a lot of people asking you about helping understand the distinction between subdomains and root domains and subfolders. For example, when we spoke earlier about building authority on your webpage, if you're building authority, say on a subdomain, does that authority carry over to your root domain? And one other specific question is, how do you think about where between the sub and the folder and the root to be posting content, and how should you consolidate all that?
Yeah, great question. The general consensus amongst Google search engine, right? We're talking about Google's public-facing people, John Mueller, Matt Cutts in the past, Gary Elias. They all say, well, no, it doesn't matter, right? You have blog.domain.com. That's basically the same as domain.com/blog. However, the general consensus amongst SEOs is not the case, right? This is because if you have a subdomain, we'll call it, blog.tumblr.com, should Tumblr's authority of being like a DA90 pass over to your blog because it's created on the subdomain? No, it shouldn't. So there is actually a fairly big distinction. I think Google is obviously trying its best to work that out, to cluster together the right elements to say, okay, well, blog.tumblr.com does belong to Tumblr, and that is like legit. But Bernard's blog.tumblr.com does not, so that one doesn't. But it still struggles, right? And that can be manipulated. So everything from an SEO perspective, you do want to keep on your root domain just as a general best practice. And then just know that Google is working on making sure that blog.domain.com does inherit as much authority from domain.com as possible.
Awesome. So Natasha asked to follow up to my earlier answer, which is, can't we just use the Facebook Pixel plus Google Analytics? Aren't those two free tools to complement out all your tracking? So Facebook Pixel is a fantastic free resource with hyper accurate attribution. One problem may be it only holds data for up to 180 days. And it's not simple to just take that data and then associate it to account profiles in your own database on your website. So if you're not if you're looking to see the general broad strokes and trends of user behavior through your website, the Facebook Pixel is completely fine. But if you're looking to store data, like for example, someone came from this blog post, they then read that blog post, and then this one, and then they converted into a lead. And now you can associate that lead, meaning their email or their purchase history in your database, to that browsing history. That's when you would want a third party or a third party tool such as one of these event-based tracking tools. Google Analytics lets you do a lot of this too. It's just not super self-evident how to set it up nor maintain it. And it's not really built for event-based tracking. So it's outside the real scope of this conversation, so I'll stop there. All right, Bernie, we got more stuff for you. Let's see here. A lot of people asking about historical SEO optimization. So one person asked, will it hurt you if you go back and retroactively update a blog post that's not performing too well? And how do you think about when should you go back? I know it's hard to answer in 30-ish seconds, but I'll let you do your best.
Great question. That's actually an emerging SEO best practice, which is content refreshes. It's not a tactic, right? Google's not saying, oh, you went back and refreshed it. It speaks to the evolution of the topic. What Bitcoin was 2 years ago is different than what Bitcoin is today, and it's likely going to be what's different 2 years from now. So content refreshes is based on the evolution, society's view of the topic. You would not go back and refresh a piece of content that talks about when Abraham Lincoln was born, because that topic is a fact. Facts don't change. You would go back and update a piece of content on the best email marketing tips of 2019, because what used to work in 2018 may not be the best things that work in 2019. So that means that if you're seeing a lot of title tags or date stamps in the search engine results page that have 2019, October of 2019, it indicates that that's a query that deserves freshness because it's evolving very quickly. Whereas if you're seeing obviously stuff that hasn't been touched in a long time, that's usually because it's a fact or the topic just has not changed.
Awesome. Amanda asks, if we have a blog post that's getting tons of impressions and is ranking in the top 5, but it's only getting 200 clicks a month, let's say, for example, it's getting 1 million impressions, but only 200 clicks a month, how do you think about solving that problem? What do you do to optimize that?
So first, actually, the real question is, are you actually rank 5, or are you actually in the photo gallery or the video gallery of Google? And that's why you are rank 5, because the photo gallery element is rank 5. We actually ran into this for the variety of websites that we own, where we're like, wow, this piece of content is getting a crap ton of impressions, but there's no clicks. And upon further inspection, it's because we were the #1 photo that Google would display in the photo gallery. And anytime that flagged, that would count as an impression. So that's the first thing to diagnose, is whether or not it's actually your piece of content that's ranking. Because when you see that large of a disparity, it's usually not necessarily your piece of content. And then the second thing is obviously, okay, well, what's your title tag saying? What's your above the fold experience of that content experience, right? Could that be better? Are you displaying the right things? In a nutshell, I mean, that's what I would look at.
Awesome. Let's see here. A lot of stuff about geographical authority. Okay, we're going to ask a broad question that I know a lot of people want to know the answer to. If you don't feel like you're the right person to answer, Bernie, just let me know and we'll move on. Chris asks, how do you get traffic when you're just starting out your blog and have no pre-existing users? What's the 80-20 of starting out?
That's a good question. So honestly, the real answer is borrowing. So instead of building the mountain from scratch, you borrow, right? You go to your friend's website who has authority, who has audience, right? For example, I'd go to, say, Demand Curve or Nat Eliason and say, hey, I'll create content for you for free if you publish it on your site. And so what we're doing is that we're borrowing their authority and we're borrowing their audience to rank. And obviously I'll have an author bio. I'll ask for a followed link back to my web property, but we're borrowing, right? Because that's the easiest way to pick up traction early on.
Awesome. Let's take a look here. Some people are asking about buying backlinks. Is it dangerous? What are your thoughts there, Bernie?
Yes, it is dangerous. I have bought a lot of backlinks in the past. I've tried a lot of shady SEO things, negative SEO attacks, right? Buying spammy links to competitors. Most of the backlinks that you're buying, they're either comment spam, or if they're one notch above that, then they're private blog networks, which is a fancy way of saying a webmaster owns a network of 10 to 1,000 websites that look independently owned and operated, but are actually puppeteered by one mastermind, which then can drip links to their money websites that usually sell weight loss pills and payday loans and all of that crazy stuff. And then one notch above that is your white hat link building services, where I'm sure as growth people and webmasters, you get these emails all the time, right? Dear Julian or website owner, you have 6 critical errors, or may I suggest a post for you? That's as like white glove as it gets. But like Nat was saying before, it is really expensive. You should really think hard about your strategy from a backlink perspective, right? Either you're giving them really high quality free content, you've created a really high quality piece that you think is actually a benefit for their audience to link to. And you just got to be wary about buying links, right? If anyone doesn't want to tell you their approach, right? That's what you say, okay, if I'm going to buy links, well, what are you doing? And if they're like, oh, well, that's our secret sauce, then you say, okay, well, I'm going to take my money and bounce. I'm out of here. But if they're saying, okay, my secret sauce is that we're going to produce some, lead, like some link magnets for you, and then do some outreach. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Secret sauce stuff, stay away from that.
Nat would say the same thing. Nat would, if you were here, he would say, do not buy backlinks, not worth the risk. One bad buying event can tank months or years of your SEO performance. And fundamentally, if you focus on high quality content, targeting the right keywords at the intersection of competition and volume, those are the tenets to always fall back to. All right, a few more rapid fires for Bernard. Guy asked a clever question. Let's say you have a blog post that says, like, that's the URL for that blog post is something like best practices of 2018. That's the actual domain URL. Would you then want to go back and update that URL to say best practices of 2019 and so forth in every coming year? Or should you avoid putting years in the URL altogether? Thoughts there?
Avoid putting URLs in or dates in the URL altogether. If you look at any of the dominant SEO players across all of the different verticals, talking NerdWallet, Healthline, TripAdvisor, no one has a date in their URL. It's just nerdwallet.com/best-credit-cards. That's because they're keeping that content fresh, relevant, right? If you have 4/2019 in there, you're kind of boned. Well, you're not kind of boned, but it just takes more work, right? You have to then create a 301 redirect from best credit cards for 2018 in the URL to best credit cards for 2019. When you 301, some amount of like link equity is lost, right? Google's not just going to pass 100% of the authority to the new website. It's going to pass somewhere between 20 to like 95%, depending on how relevant Google thinks the new URL is.
Bernie Anton asks, how important are page speed numbers really for SEO?
So you can think of page speed as a negative SEO factor, not a positive one. What I mean by that is, say you have 2 pages, same content, one loads at 500 milliseconds, another loads at 1500 milliseconds. The one that's being loaded at 1500 milliseconds is getting, say, -5 in the algorithm. However, the one that's loading at 500 milliseconds, if we then compare that to one that's loading at 200 milliseconds, it's not like Google saying, oh, 500 milliseconds plus 1, 200 milliseconds plus 4, right? What's happening is that Google's saying, okay, below a certain threshold, we'll call it 400 milliseconds. Who cares, right? The page is loading fast enough. You get penalized for it loading slower on desktop or on mobile, because internet connections are slower usually. And you have more leniency on desktop to load the page. But Google's not saying you load it faster, I give you more points. They say you load it slower, you get penalized, in my opinion.
Bernie, by the way, someone in the Q&A earlier said, can we just take a moment to point out how badass Bernard is? And I got to agree with that person. Bernie, you should take a look at the comments. People love you. Did a great job. No surprise there. And thank you for all the kind words. Super appreciated. Really glad you guys dug it. That's it for today's webinar. You can check out demandcurve.com for details on our growth marketing training program and other cool growth related products that we work on. Have a great day.